Hey Smash fans, I hope that you all are having amazing days. There are some technical difficulties with the video to this podcast. So for today's episode, there isn't going to be a video portion. So if you are listening to this on YouTube, I'm sorry. However, this is still one of my favorite podcast episodes I have recorded. So please continue to tune in. If you prefer to listen to this on Spotify, then you can 100% go do that. But once again, I'm sorry. I apologize. But I still hope you guys really like this episode because I really liked recording it. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the PD Smash Podcast. Today, I'm going to restart that just so I can do this. All right. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the PD Smash Podcast. Today, we have a great one for you. First, we're going to talk about Steph Curry breaking the all-time three-point record. After that, we're going to talk about OBJ's resurgence with the LA Rams. Then we're going to talk about the Rams and Cardinals game this past Monday before rounding it off with the NFL playoff race. So once again, Smash fans, I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in to this episode of the PD Smash Podcast. And without further ado, let's get into it. So as I said, first off, I wanted to talk about Stephen Curry and the three-point record. And now, I don't want to just talk about this, about him just, breaking the three-point record, because that was obviously going to happen. But I want to talk about more about what it means and what that means for people in general. Because Steph Curry changes the game. Steph Curry is one of, if not the most influential player of all time when it comes to basketball. Because you've had four major evolutions of the game. The first evolution was of people just taking layups, not really trying to do any dribble moves fancy, not trying to do anything, just kind of waiting out the clock, getting close shots, shooting layups. The next generation was the Julius Erving generation. The high-flying, flashy, that type of thing. They prided themselves on being flashy, but the game was still very post-centric. It was still very layup heavy, still very dunk heavy. There was just more flash to it. After that, you started to get players like Magic, like Larry, who instead of just being they're an outlier of two, or like there are a few outliers of good guard play where they could dribble the ball well, they play make. Now you were getting people who were 6'8", 6'9", who could play make, who could rebound, who could shoot, who could do all of these things all in one. Then after that, you had Jordan, where Jordan really iconicized the NBA culture. He made it cool to be in the NBA. He was what moved the NBA culture along the farthest, but he never really changed the game. He changed how the game was perceived, but not the game itself in substantial ways. And then you have Steph Curry, a man who, by himself, single-handedly, was able to transform a league that was shooting 18 threes a game to a league that is now shooting almost double that in just over 5 years. A league that for its first 70 or so years, it took him 70 years to not only get the three-point line implemented, but to get him to shoot to 18 shots a game. Even since, let's say 1984, I believe, is when the three-point line was introduced, I want to say. Sometime in the 80s. It was right when Jordan started to play. So let's just say 1985, make the math simple. From 1985 to 2015, that's about what? 30 years? 20 years to get to 2005? Yep, 30 years. It took teams 30 years to shoot 18 shots a game, 18 three-pointers a game. Because of Steph Curry, that number has doubled in the past 5 years. And not only has that doubled, you get players now who are taking shots from the logo with regularity. A player like LeBron, who rarely ever took threes, his first decade, almost decade and a half playing, now will take 6 threes a game, take shots from the logo. And that, whether or not we want to acknowledge it or not, whether or not he wants to acknowledge that or not, is because of Steph Curry. If Steph Curry did not exist, LeBron would not be as dominant as he is now, because he would not take as many three-point shots as he did now. And I'm sorry, but anyone in year 19 can't be as effective from the paint, can't be as effective from the mid-range if they don't have that three-point shot. And because he has that three-point shot now, it's not as good as Steph's, but it's a lot better than most people give him credit for. It transformed the game. Damian Lillard would not be Damian Lillard without Steph Curry. Trae Young would probably not even be in the league, if we're being completely honest, if it wasn't for Steph Curry. James Harden would not fully be James Harden without Steph Curry, because James Harden, with the foul baiting threes, all of that happened after Steph Curry established the fact that it was okay to take 8 threes a game. That's all Steph Curry. It's because of Steph Curry that the three-point shot is an acceptable mode of offense. Steph Curry is the driving force behind the biggest change we have seen in the NBA in almost 40 years. Steph Curry is the most influential player in NBA history, because not only did he introduce the three-point line as a viable option, he also was the first person to really show the significance of gravity on the court. Now, there have been players who've had gravity before, offensive gravity in particular. For example, LeBron, of course, he gets a lot of attention. You get double teams, you get triple teams. However, no one was ever talking about that gravity until Steph Curry came. Because Steph Curry is such a lethal shooter, because Steph Curry is Steph Curry, what happens for Steph Curry's teammates is ridiculous. You'll get 4 or 5 people looking at the ball with him 36 feet out. And that's one great pass away from a wide open layup. And Draymond Green also helped with Steph's gravity, because Draymond Green is the perfect player to pair along with Steph Curry, because Draymond Green is able to capitalize on Steph's gravity. But that never happens if Steph doesn't have that gravity. There are so many opportunities that are afforded for people because of Steph's gravity. You can't double team him, you can't triple team him, because he'll get around you. Yet you can't leave him on an island, because he'll shoot over you. He is the greatest offensive player in history, not because of what he can do individually, but because of what he can do for his teammates. Steph Curry's gravity is what makes him so great. And I don't think there's ever going to be another player in NBA history, or not for a while at least, that carries that same gravity. And he was the pioneer of it. There's a reason that people still admire what players of old did and rank them higher than new players, even if they weren't necessarily as good. And I think that's what's going to happen with Steph Curry. I think people are going to truly appreciate the greatness. At least that's what I hope will happen with Steph Curry, because I think probably 20, 30 years down the line, we're going to have Steph Curry will probably be fifth all time in the overall shooting, in the overarching shooting record list. But I hope he's still remembered as the best shooter, or at least one of the best shooters of all time. Because he did it in an era where shooting three was not popular. It was not the cool thing. It's not what you trained to be. No one was like Curry growing up for him. There was no GOAT shooter. Ray Allen and Reggie Miller were the two best shooters of all time. You could throw Larry Bird in there if you really wanted to. But now it's just Steph. You got logo shots farther and farther out. Players are modeling their games after Steph. Players don't model their games after LeBron. Players did model their games after Jordan, but not to the extent you see now. You see Steph Curry, people just trying to shoot farther and farther out because they want to be like Steph. Be like Steph is the greatest phenomenon the NBA has ever seen. There has never been a more rapid change in sport than what has happened over the past 5 years and past 6 years in basketball. There's not another example of it. You can look through all of history: football, soccer, basketball, hockey. This is it, man. There's not been one player who's transformed the game more than Steph Curry has. It took decades for the NFL to transition from a run first league to a pass first league. It's taken baseball generation after generation after generation to even figure out how to tamper down the dominance of big market teams. In soccer, it's been the same way for so long. There's just never been something like there is with this. There is nothing across any sport, maybe other than Wayne Gretzky in hockey, where you could ask 100 basketball fans who's the greatest shooter of all time, and all 100 of them would say Steph Curry. You couldn't even do that with football. Tom Brady, I think, is the GOAT. But you couldn't ask 100 football fans who's the greatest quarterback of all time, and you get 100 Tom Bradys. You would definitely get a few Peyton Mannings in there. You get maybe one Aaron Rodgers stand, but they're wrong. You get some guy from the 60s like a Johnny Unitas. Maybe you'd get a Joe Montana, but you would not get 100 Bradys. If you asked for the greatest shooter of all time, you would get 100 Steph Currys. And that, my friends, is the greatness of the one and only Steph Curry. With that all being said, I don't know when his record is going to be broken. His record could be broken 10 years after retire, 30 years after he retires, 40, 50. I don't imagine it will be that long after he retires because, like I said, it's a cultural revolution. I don't know what will happen next. I'm excited to see it. But Steph Curry did change the game. Speaking of someone else who did change how a game was perceived, OBJ and the LA Rams seem to be working out. And that makes me really happy because I was a big, at that time, Washington Redskins fan. Now, Washington football team fan. But I really didn't get into football until OBJ and that catch. That catch is one of the things that really sparked my passion for the game. And it's really good to see OBJ thriving again. I think he's been dealt a bad hand a few times. Eli Manning was never a great quarterback, especially towards the end of his career. Baker Mayfield, I think, is an extremely overrated quarterback. He has a star personality, but he's not a star. He can't throw the deep ball accurately. And overall, the one thing that I've seen over the years that gets OBJ going is that deep ball. He's a deep threat wide receiver. And the fact he couldn't do that with the Browns was the problem. And it's once he gets those deep threat shots, those deep threat opportunities, that's what gets him into rhythm for the shorter stuff. And I think that is why he's thriving right now, because he's getting those deep shots. And I think as he continues to progress, he's going to get more and more comfortable in the Rams offense. And I think next year, the three-headed monster of OBJ, if he does decide to return, which I think he will, OBJ, Cooper Kupp, and Robert Woods, with Matthew Stafford throwing them the ball, is going to be one of the hardest things to guard in NFL history. Because you're guarding three number one receivers, essentially. Robert Woods is I would say, bottom tier number one wide receiver. Not in terms of he's still a top 30 wide receiver. I would just say he's probably closer to 20, 25. Cooper Kupp's probably borderline top 5. I would say he's probably about 8. OBJ's top 15 when healthy. And then you get Matthew Stafford, who's a borderline top 10 quarterback. He's streaky, but he's definitely at least a borderline top 10 quarterback. He can get the ball 50, 60 yards down the field. He can make every throw on the football field with relative consistency. I just think overall this is a absolutely massive thing for the Rams and for OBJ's entire career. And speaking of that, kind of transitioning into the Rams-Cardinals game, this was the Rams team we wanted to see. They went into and played the best team in the league currently in the Arizona Cardinals, at least record-wise, and dominated that game for 3.5 quarters. Now, they did have a slip up at the end, which they'll need to clean that up. However, I think the fact that OBJ did what he was supposed to do allowed for everything else to open up. I think the Rams really do need to go with Sony Michel, because Darrell Henderson probably overall is a little bit better, but he's very much a volume carry guy, where Sony Michel doesn't really need a lot of carries to get into rhythm. And that's what you need when you have the type of offense that Sean McVay is running this year. You can't have this volume type runner. You need to have the runner who can get you 4 yards sporadically, not a runner that will get you 5 yards a carry, but only if you give him 23 carries. You need those 4 yard a guy, 3.5 yard a guy punches that Sony Michel gives you, and he's also a better receiving back out of the backfield than Darrell Henderson. So I definitely think that's the way they should go moving forward. I really like this Rams team, and I think they definitely could make a Super Bowl push. The Cardinals, I think, will be fine. I don't know the status on DeAndre Hopkins. I know he'll be out the rest of the regular season, but I don't know what he'll miss in the playoffs. I think they might not get a bye now. I don't think the Cardinals will get a bye. I think that will probably go to Green Bay. I would think, just because I don't see, at least in the regular season, anyone on the rest of their schedule stopping them. Once it comes playoff time, especially NFC title game, Aaron Rodgers comes out to play, I could definitely see them losing. But for the rest of the regular season schedule, I don't see the Green Bay Packers losing. I think Tampa Bay is probably going to lose one more game. And then the Cardinals won't be able to hold that one seed even if they don't lose another game, because they lost that tiebreaker to the Green Bay Packers due to the fact that AJ Green can apparently not turn around the ball. And something I do want to mention is that Green Bay defense has been playing really good. They've gotten a few really key pickups off of the practice squad of other teams and off of just free agency. The player they picked up off of the practice squad from Arizona, I'm forgetting his name right now. Great player. He's an absolute gem. He needs to keep doing what he's doing, and he could become a really solid player in the NFL, and I think he has a potential to be a really good player. I don't know if he will quite make the Pro Bowl or anything like that, but he will definitely be a really good player. And I think just overall that defense with Eric Stokes, with Jair Alexander coming back, with Whitney Merciless, with Kenny Clark, with all of those people, is going to make this team very good. Now, kind of transitioning off all of that and talking about the NFL playoff race to end off this episode. And really, I want to talk about the disparity in between talent in the two conferences, where the NFC is very top heavy and the AFC is very bottom heavy. And what I mean by that is the best team in the AFC outside of the Chiefs, I don't think, of course there would be a chance, but I don't think the Ravens would be favored against any of the NFC teams, any of the NFC top 3 teams. I don't think the Tennessee Titans would. I don't think the Patriots would. I don't think the Titans would. The Bengals, the Chargers, you name it, I don't think they're favored. On the other hand, though, you take the 7th seed in either the Bills or the Colts. I don't remember who's the 7th seed right now. You put them against Dallas, probably favored. The Bills definitely favored. I would favor the Colts. You put them up against the football team, favored. Put them up against the 49ers, favored. Put them up against those bottom 4 teams in the NFC, they're favored. And not only that, there are, I think, I want to say 5 teams who are all virtually tied for the 7th seed. Right now it's the football team, but the Falcons have a 6-7 record. The Eagles have a 6-7 record. The Saints have a 6-7 record. Football team have a 6-7 record. I think there's another team that has a 6-7 record. It's just all of these teams could realistically make the playoffs with a losing record. And I think that could definitely be the case this year as well, where you see in, what would it be, 8-9 team or a 9-8 team. I would definitely be able to see an 8-9 team making the playoffs. That's definitely something I could see happening, where there are like 3 teams entering there are 3 or 4 teams entering week 17 as 8-8, and then they all lose, and they're somehow tiebreakers make it so whatever team, hopefully the football team, makes the playoffs. But just overall, I think it's really interesting to see that the talent distribution of the AFC is so much more even than the talent distribution of the NFC. Because I could see the Colts beating any team in the AFC, but there's no way in hell that the football team beats the Green Bay Packers or the Arizona Cardinals. It just ain't happening. And I think that could happen for the Colts. I could see the Colts beating Kansas City, especially because they'll play in Kansas City. It'll be cold. It would be rainy or snowy more likely. You'd have to run the ball a lot. Jonathan Taylor. Carson Wentz is still a good quarterback. Just overall, I think it's really interesting. And I think these playoffs are going to be really exciting. I can't wait for the Saturday games. That's always a fun time of year because you get football not 3 times a week, but you now get football 4 times a week, and that's always fun. Anyway, thank you so much, Smash fans. This is the end of this episode. If you're listening to this on my blog, then feel free to check out my articles. If you're not listening to this on my blog, please go click pdsmashsports.com. Please either go type in your URL, pdsmashsports.com, and go subscribe. If you are listening to this on Spotify or YouTube, you can also just click the link in the description. It's pretty swag. It's pretty cool. You should definitely go check it out. I put a lot of effort into it, but even if you don't drop a like, even if you disliked it, and you somehow stayed till the end, I want to thank you for listening because you're awesome. I hope you all are having amazing days, and I hope that you all will have an amazing day, because even if it doesn't feel like a great day now, you can always have a great day later. Thank you so much, Smash fans, for tuning in. And without further ado, PD Smash, signing off.